They arrived without warning, their envoy ship descending over Earth's United Council Hall like a silent omen. The vessel was smooth, featureless, unnaturally still in the sky. It didn't broadcast a greeting. It didn't request permission to land. It simply hovered, as if waiting for the lesser beings to acknowledge it. Inside the hall, the council stood frozen as the message came through every screen, every speaker, every neural link. This message is directed to the Terran civilization. You have trespassed beyond your assigned expansion boundaries. This violates Imperial Accord Theta 9. You will relinquish all off-world holdings, decommission your fleets, and surrender your leadership for tribunal. You have 14 Earth days to comply. The voice was synthetic but cruelly articulate, calibrated to express disdain without emotion. No name was given. No emissary shown. It was a pronouncement, not a negotiation. The silence that followed was unbearable. Within an hour, protests erupted across major cities. Panic in some, anger in others. Networks flooded with footage of burning human colonies on the fringes of settled space. The Empire had already begun enforcement, incinerating outposts without resistance. Those who tried to flee were targeted mid-jump. No survivors. The message was clear, this was no bluff. On the third day, General Marcus Hale returned from off-grid. He had been in isolation for nearly a year, overseeing black site drills with elite units. He walked into the United Defense Command headquarters without announcement, reviewed the situation for 20 minutes, then convened a private council of war. "We do not ask what they want," he said. "They've told us. We ask whether we accept it." The room was full of diplomats, admirals, intelligence officers. No one spoke. Hale was not a man known for speeches. He was known for survival, the kind that left stories behind in enemy cultures. Some of the veterans present had served with him during the Herix incursion. They remembered what he'd done to win. They also remembered what it cost. "Diplomatic channels are dead," an aide finally said. "Every signal we've sent is ignored. Their ships fired on an embassy carrier yesterday. No provocation. They don't want peace," Hale replied. "They want compliance. And a grave to put our defiance in." Over the next hours, Earth's fragmented leadership aligned under one command structure: defensive, temporary, conditional. Not everyone agreed, but fear doesn't argue long with inevitability. Hale's first directive was immediate: full-spectrum surveillance on all approaching Empire fleets, recovery of black site prototypes, and total lockdown on quantum network access. By day 5, over a dozen human colonies had been erased from the star charts. The Empire released footage of the strikes, precise, clinical exterminations. No commentary. Just death. The kind that teaches a lesson. But something strange happened. The more the Empire destroyed, the less compliant Earth became. Miners volunteered for military service en masse. Retired naval engineers reactivated forgotten shipyards. Coders built wartime algorithms overnight. Farmers donated material from harvest fleets to retrofit old cruisers. Civilians formed information relay chains spanning light years, crowdsourcing intelligence faster than satellites. And still, no official response from Earth. That silence ended on day 8. From a secure uplink buried beneath the Himalayas, General Hale transmitted a message across the galaxy. It bypassed Empire censorship, riding through quantum packet fragmentation and stolen frequency markers. "I am General Marcus Hale, Supreme Executor of Earth's Defense Network. I speak now because our words have been ignored. I speak now because our people have been burned." He didn't shout. His voice was steady, precise. "You misunderstand humanity. We do not crave territory. We do not seek dominion. We came to the stars because survival demands it. And if you threaten that survival, you become the enemy of something you cannot measure." He paused, letting the words settle. "We know what you are. We've studied your wars, your methods, your punishments. You believe fear ensures control. That overwhelming power guarantees obedience. You are wrong." He leaned forward. "You have murdered our citizens. You have targeted our children. You have declared extermination without cause. Let me return the favor, in truth. He ended the message with 12 words. If you kill humans, we will declare war. And we will not stop. The message pulsed across Empire territory like a virus, spreading faster than firewalls could contain. It wasn't flashy. It didn't threaten destruction. But it was remembered. The Empire laughed. For now. But somewhere, in systems far from any charted lanes, resistance cells replayed the message again and again. And alien rulers who had crushed 100 civilizations before Earth paused. Because in Hale's voice, they heard something different. Not rage. Not desperation. Conviction. The Empire expected panic. Instead, it encountered silence and motion. Across Earth and its remaining colonies, something old stirred behind the modern face of civilization. Not just anger. Calculation. Humanity had never been a monolith, but the Empire's attacks unified it faster than any treaty ever had. Within 48 hours of Hale's declaration, over 200,000 volunteers flooded local enlistment networks. Most had no military background. They were miners, deep space welders, salvagers, terraformers, mechanics. Hardened by vacuum, failure, and isolation. The kind of people who didn't wait for orders. They built what was needed from wreckage. While planetary governments broadcast evacuation protocols, another network rose beneath them, independent, decentralized, fast. Former intelligence officers, rogue AI clusters, and civilian engineers merged into a digital shadow structure, repurposing Earth's entertainment satellites into surveillance tools and communications relays. The Empire's position tracking was no longer one-sided. Humanity didn't attempt to match the Empire ship for ship. That would be suicide. Instead, they returned to what had always kept them alive: asymmetry. Where the Empire used scale, humans used subversion. Where the Empire employed order, humans deployed chaos. A small convoy of modified cargo freighters lured an Imperial recon corvette into a debris field near the Vecton Ring. Within 4 minutes, the corvette was gone, torn apart by remote-triggered pulse mines masked as salvage. Not a single human pilot had been aboard. That wasn't the only loss. An orbital refinery, previously considered abandoned, activated long-range jammers and fried a nearby Empire listening post. The control code used was based on their own encryption. Someone had cracked it, likely days after first contact. On Mars, a think tank composed of university dropouts and retired cyberwarfare agents developed an invasive logic bomb capable of inducing software confusion in Empire's ship AI. Within a week, 3 Empire cruisers stalled mid-transit, unable to differentiate between navigation data and command inputs. They drifted helplessly into planetary gravity wells, their distress signals distorted by looping echo chambers. The Empire suspected sabotage but had no proof. Humans never claimed credit. Morale didn't rise, it transformed. Humanity wasn't hopeful. It was resolved. One by one, old grudges between Terran blocs dissolved. Russian and Chinese military archives were opened to Allied research labs. South American kinetic propulsion specialists collaborated with Scandinavian quantum theorists. African orbital architects unlocked blueprints once buried beneath decades of political standoff. From the chaos of Earth's history came a cold, mutual understanding. Survival demanded contribution, not agreement. Humanity's military command, now operating as the Unified Terran Defense Node, authorized a policy shift. Strategic retreats were to be replaced with misdirection operations. Civilian ships, masked as refugee transports, smuggled prototype weapons and sensor data across contested zones. No warships were spared for show. Every hull was stripped to core systems, optimized for disruption and stealth. General Hale issued his second statement, this time internally. We will not compete with their scale. We will make them bleed at every point they overreach. His orders were not poetic. They were systemic. Strike teams would not hold ground, they would erase it. Research facilities too large to move were sabotaged remotely. Empire forces would find only ash and traps where infrastructure once stood. And they did. Repeatedly. The Empire's analysts, initially dismissive, began flagging Earth as tactically deviant. Requests for reinforcements increased. Fleet captains submitted psychological reports warning of unpredictable enemy engagement styles. Despite clear technological superiority, their kill-to-loss ratio was slipping. They didn't understand why. In truth, they weren't fighting a single force. They were fighting millions of disconnected variables all moving with singular clarity, denied the Empire control. Some acts were small. A remote colony orbiting a dead star transmitted false resource signatures to lure Empire surveyors into asteroid storms. Others were massive. A civilian science team on Europa created a phased frequency burst that cloaked an entire lunar installation from Empire scans for 12 hours, long enough to evacuate all personnel and leave behind a detonation field rigged to ignite upon detection. In every battle, humans didn't aim to win. They aimed to teach. Each destroyed Empire vessel, each sabotaged outpost, each jammed signal was a message carved into the hull of the war. You are not safe. Not here. Not anymore. The psychological shift was irreversible. For the first time in its expansion era, the Empire found itself hesitating. Their captains began deploying escorts for scout missions. Supply convoys altered routes to avoid human echo zones. Even minor warp jumps were now accompanied by multi-phase shielding to guard against human hacking methods. But the most telling change came from the civilians on other worlds. Refugees from subjugated species began encoding messages into trade shipments. Short, cautious phrases. Hope lives on Earth. Your fight is ours. The tyrants can bleed. Humanity wasn't just fighting back. It was starting something older than war, an idea that even the most dominant force could be wounded by willpower, unpredictability, and unity forged through necessity. The Empire had demanded silence, surrender, and compliance. Instead, it got a whisper passed across stars. We are still here. And we will not be moved. The Empire called it a bluff. A dying species flexing before the inevitable. They dismissed Hale's threat as noise, a final scream from a cornered civilization. But in less than 2 weeks, 3 of their border depots were disabled without a trace. One imploded from internal pressure, no projectile, no energy weapon. Another was abandoned, its personnel missing, lights still on. The third vanished from telemetry, later found drifting empty in high orbit, stripped of data cores. The message had shifted from promise to action. Galactic leaders outside the Empire began to take interest. Most had survived by aligning with power or staying invisible. Watching humans defy both logic and protocol unnerved them. The transmission that followed forced every one of them to choose a side. General Hale appeared again, but this time not through a tactical relay. He chose the central broadcast band used for interspecies negotiation, a network supposedly untouchable without Empire permission. The act itself was a declaration, but it was the content that changed everything. This is General Hale of Earth. This message is not for the Empire. They've already decided who they are. This is for everyone else who's listening. We are not asking for support. We are not asking for shelter. We are stating a fact. His eyes didn't move. His voice sharp, deliberate. The Empire has murdered our people. Civilians. Children. Entire colonies eradicated without a single demand for dialogue. We warned them. They responded with silence. Now they will face consequence. No threats. No volume. Just certainty. You may think we're weak. You may think we are outmatched. And maybe we are. But remember this, we are not fighting to win. We are fighting to make memory. When the next empire rises, and the next tyrant sends ships to conquer, they will remember what happened when Earth was provoked. He paused. Your silence won't protect you. When you are weak, they will turn on you too. If not today, tomorrow. What we do now is not just for us. He leaned closer to the lens. If you kill humans, we will not stop. If you silence us, others will speak. And when you think it's over, we'll still be there, uninvited, unwanted, and unforgettable. Then the feed cut. The transmission caused immediate upheaval. Empire Command attempted to scrub the message, but it had already propagated across 10,000 nodes. Neutral systems archived it. Pirate bands distributed it. Civilian networks turned it into rallying code. It reached refugee populations, rebellion cells, forgotten colonies. A line had been drawn, not by military power, but by clarity of purpose. That same week, Empire subjugates began to act differently. Small resistances emerged on fringe planets. Traders altered routes to avoid Empire zones, not out of fear, but in subtle protest. One freighter broadcast Hale's words in a loop on open channels for 72 hours before being destroyed. Its final signal wasn't a distress call, it was a repeat of Hale's warning. Within Empire ranks, officers grew uneasy. They hadn't expected resistance with narrative control broken. They relied on psychological supremacy, not just weapons. But Hale's statement didn't just inspire humans. It broke the illusion of the Empire's inevitability. In private sessions, Empire analysts flagged a growing term circulating among lower-ranked human forces: the Reckoning Pact. It wasn't an official directive. It was an understanding. No surrender. No compromise. No memory left clean. Every encounter with human forces was now treated as high risk, regardless of the odds. Empire Marines began requesting psychological evaluations. Patterns of hesitation appeared in unit logs. A reconnaissance unit sent to suppress a minor human outpost returned in silence. No battle. No engagement. The commanding officer simply said, "It's not worth it." That shift echoed in command chains. Empire governors demanded stronger reprisals. Central Command hesitated. Not out of mercy, but calculation. Every action against Earth only seemed to deepen the resolve and expand their influence through fearlessness. Force projection was becoming counterproductive. Across star systems, humanity's declaration sparked something deeper than conflict. It reframed identity. They weren't resisting annihilation. They were redefining its cost. No Empire's ship would pass unchallenged. No victory would come clean. Every attempt to silence them would amplify them instead. Hale didn't issue ultimatums. He didn't posture. He simply declared an unshakable truth: humanity would not go quietly, and anyone who tried to erase them would find only resistance and legacy in their place. By the time Empire High Command classified Earth as a Tier 1 threat, it was already too late. The galaxy had heard. And more importantly, believed. The first major engagement began without warning. An Empire dreadnought entered human space on a standard intimidation route. No escort, no support, pure arrogance. It never returned. Human forces didn't launch a frontal assault. They severed its navigational relay, flooded its sensors with phantom signals, then detonated a chain of decoy ships to force emergency maneuvers. The dreadnought clipped a dark matter net deployed weeks prior, destabilized its core drive, and vanished into its own wake. Not a single shot was exchanged. The lesson was immediate: human war wasn't war, it was erosion. What followed was not a campaign, but a dismantling. Human operatives embedded in neutral zones began disabling Empire relay stations using reverse-engineered code. They didn't claim territory. They simply made it unusable. Colonies the Empire once used as supply nodes went dark, systems corrupted beyond repair. Empire repair crews arrived to find resources missing, structures rigged with countermeasures, personnel gone. No evidence. No demands. At the tactical level, humans didn't seek dominance, they targeted function. Power grids, communication arrays, sensor calibration nodes. When Empire fleets engaged, they found their weapons delayed by milliseconds, their targeting systems inaccurate, their AI assistants unresponsive. Nothing overt. Just enough to give human ships the edge they needed to escape, or strike. An Empire battalion was dispatched to intercept a rumored human weapons cache on a lifeless moon. Upon arrival, they found empty buildings, humming with residual heat. As they split to secure the perimeter, the entire surface fractured beneath them. Automated seismic drills had been running for days, hollowing the terrain into a crater timed to collapse the moment pressure thresholds were met. Empire casualties, total. Human presence, none. In orbit, fleets didn't engage in drawn-out battles. They initiated calculated strikes. Cargo vessels armed with EMP torpedoes feigned surrender, then disabled cruisers in coordinated bursts. Boarding pods infiltrated ventilation tunnels and neural relay points, sabotaging internal systems and extracting data before self-immolation. The cost of every advance became unacceptable. Empire Command shifted tactics, opting for brute force. Planetary bombardments replaced occupation. Civilian zones were targeted to trigger surrender. But with each atrocity, the response was more brutal. Human retaliation wasn't grand, it was surgical. A fleet responsible for the destruction of a refugee station was later found in pieces, scattered across a gas giant's ring system. Only one message was left behind in orbital debris. You took children. We took silence. Throughout the spiral arms, the myth of human unpredictability grew. No planet, no region, no ship was safe. Not because humans controlled them, but because they refused to be excluded from them. They infiltrated where they were forbidden. They adapted to weapons designed to break them. They learned, iterated, improved. Not in decades, within days. Empire scientists studied captured human tech and found innovations cobbled from disparate eras. Pre-warp mechanics fused with modern AI logic. Outdated hulls fitted with plasma disruptor shells built from mining equipment. No symmetry, no elegance, only efficiency. And effectiveness. Human AI began deploying predictive algorithms to chart Empire movements, creating phantom fleets in their path. By the time Empire scouts reached their destination, they found empty space. Their chase was no longer against an army, it was against intent. On the ground, human troops refused to hold position unless it served disruption. They deployed sensory overload systems to disorient enemies, used terrain manipulation to destabilize fortifications, and left behind traps that reacted to body heat and gravity signatures. When captured, they offered no intel. When outnumbered, they set timers. When faced with defeat, they dragged their enemies into it. The most devastating incident occurred at the edge of the Lysian corridor. Empire forces surrounded a human convoy caught in drift. No weapons, no propulsion, just drifting metal. When they approached to secure it, the convoy activated its core, a synchronized pulse beacon that fried all nearby AI systems. 7 cruisers were left adrift, paralyzed in deep space. Within 2 hours, human forces stripped them of weapons and vanished. The ships were later returned, intact but hollow, their insignias overwritten with a single word: remember. By now, the Empire wasn't fighting a military. It was enduring a doctrine, one that rewrote every known rule of conflict. There were no battlefronts. No secure zones. No surrender conditions. Only a species that refused to vanish. Empire losses were numerical, they were symbolic. Every destroyed base, every defeated captain, every miscalculation chipped away at the illusion of dominance. What unnerved them most wasn't human technology. It was conviction backed by adaptation, defiance refined into method. Hale didn't issue further public orders. He didn't need to. His forces didn't fight for victory. They fought to ensure the Empire couldn't call any place safe again. And they were succeeding. The Empire prepared its final answer. A weapon once thought theoretical, a planet killer powered by a gravity core, capable of imploding entire biospheres without leaving debris. It was not deployed as a threat but as a conclusion. The order was issued: target Earth's moon first. A warning. Then Earth itself. No broadcasts. No terms. Just extinction. The fleet assigned to carry out the operation never made it past the Kuiper perimeter. 30 Empire vessels, fully armed, shielded, escorted, vanished. Their remains were later found in multiple fragments stretched across the system. Black box recordings revealed coordinated attacks involving gravity distortion, AI collapse, and internal sabotage. Every second of it traced back to pre-planted signals embedded within Empire systems months prior. Earth had been waiting. What the Empire failed to understand was that humanity had turned its entire defense into a distributed resistance. Every sensor, ship, satellite, and station served not just tactical function, but narrative strategy. Their response was no longer about survival, it was to establish permanence. Even in death, they would not be forgotten. When news of the failed strike reached outer systems, the effect was immediate. Subjugated species that had long accepted compliance as survival began open insurrections. Not full-scale wars, but acts of rejection. Empire flags removed. Access denied? In a galaxy ruled by fear, the idea of refusal had found a face. Empire Command held an emergency summit. Arguments spiraled, some demanded escalation, others warned of collapse. But one truth was clear: Earth had made retaliation too expensive. Not in ships. In reputation. To continue was to prove weakness. An offer was sent. Not peace. Not alliance. A conditional ceasefire. The language was careful, avoiding submission, preserving pride. Earth's terms were received in return: immediate halt to all offensive operations, withdrawal from contested zones, and the release of human prisoners without delay. General Hale responded with a single phrase: "We do not need your apology. We need your retreat." The Empire complied. Across Terran space, human forces paused. Not because they trusted the enemy, but because the objective had been met. The war was never about dominance. It was to ensure the galaxy understood the price of trying to erase them. The aftermath wasn't celebration. It was reconstruction. Human fleets returned to damaged colonies, recovered black box data, restored supply chains, and began medical triage at planetary scale. No media. No parades. Just continuity. Alien diplomats who once ignored Earth now requested dialogue. Carefully worded, always cautious. They asked how Earth achieved the impossible. How it faced extinction without compromise. The answer was always the same: humans were not built for obedience. They were built to remember. Rebel leaders from other systems requested covert cooperation. Human command did not promise aid but offered knowledge. Patterns of Empire logistics. Vulnerabilities. Psychological profiles of command personnel. No formal alliances were declared. But something older than treaties began to spread: shared defiance. The myth of human endurance became more than propaganda. It became precedent. Future Imperial strategists were taught Earth's resistance not as an anomaly, but as a possibility. Manuals were rewritten. Protocols revised. No species, no matter how small, would be assumed compliant again. Within the unified Terran network, a directive was passed: expansion would resume, but not in conquest. New embassies were to be established in neutral zones. Not to impose law, but to signal presence. Earth would not vanish into isolation. Not again. General Hale never gave a victory speech. He refused all commendations. His only public statement after the ceasefire was brief. This was never about winning. It was about not being erased. You learn that when you come from a world that had to fight for every breath before it ever looked at the stars. He retired months later, location classified. His name became doctrine, not legend. Not glorified, not idolized. Just remembered. Because that was enough. Earth's skies no longer held the threat of war. But they did not forget. Defense systems remained active. Intelligence networks expanded. Civilian sectors were trained not just in survival, but continuity. Peace, for humanity, was not a resting state. It was an intermission between warnings. What the Empire left behind was more dangerous than occupation. They left behind proof. Proof that control could fail. That will could surpass scale. That extinction could be challenged without surrendering identity. And in every corner of the galaxy where oppression still festered, someone repeated the same phrase, whispered like a creed. If you kill humans, they will come for you. Not for revenge. For remembrance. The war ended. The message didn't.